What up, cucks? It's your boy, The Hater, and I wanted to do a video on the WWE Draft. I wanted to wait until all of the draft selections were done so we could fully mock this garbage for what it ultimately ended up being. Without further ado, let's get started, cuckolds. First of all, night one on SmackDown, we started the draft off with the number one pick being, of course, the Bloodline, Roman Reigns, and for some reason, Solo Sikoa gets tacked onto this bullshit. It's almost like he should be picked second because Solo Sikoa is part of the package. It's almost like SmackDown should be like, well, we want Roman, but we really don't want Solo Sikoa. Nobody wants Solo Sikoa. And now, ladies and gents, Solo Sikoa is a number one pick, technically. You know what I'm saying? Raw follows up with a huge mistake and picks Cucky Rhodes as number one. Mid-card Cucky is the number one draft pick now. AEW guy is a number one draft pick for Raw, number two overall. Next up, Raw picks Bianca Belair, which makes sense because she's the women's champion for Raw. Now, here's the thing. She goes to SmackDown now, cucks. She goes to SmackDown, so what are we going to do? Are we going to flip titles again? Who knows? Who cares? But at least it makes sense because in kayfabe, the women's titles are considered to be very prestigious. In my opinion, this makes sense, but it's not intelligent because nobody wants to see Bianca Belair. Then Becky Lynch, who has been completely mediocre since her return, gets picked by Raw. She was on Raw. She stays on Raw. Thus far, Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa from SmackDown stay on SmackDown. Cucky Rhodes, Raw, stays on Raw. Bianca Belair, she's the champion, so she is the one that switches shows because that makes sense. And then, of course, here's where it gets really stupid now. In order to keep Montez Ford with Bianca Belair, the Street Profits get picked by SmackDown with the 5th overall pick, right? Now, they're on SmackDown. This is incredibly dumb because the next pick by Raw is Imperium. Imperium is not going to be on Raw. So you get the IC champion, right? You get Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci, right? And instead, you could have had the Street Profits. Think about how much sense that makes. Angelo Dawkins, who should be released, and Montez Ford, who will never become the face of the company, despite what people want and what they think. He's too small, cucks. He's too small and he's too boring. All right? So these guys get picked before Imperium. But, to make matters even worse, Edge gets picked to go to SmackDown. Edge, motherfucks, a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, gets picked after the Street Profits. Think about that for a second. Next up, we get Matt Riddle. He's staying on Raw. Bobby Lashley goes to SmackDown. So far, I'd say SmackDown is winning this draft thus far, especially considering, people like Lashley. They did, however, get the Street Profits, so, it's up in the air. Next up, Drew McIntyre goes to Raw where he belongs. I always associate Drew McIntyre with Raw. I don't even know why he was on SmackDown. Then the OC, which is a steal because you get a tag team and AJ Styles, as well as Michin Mia Yim, which nobody wants. That's probably why they went so late. The 11th pick, the OC, goes to SmackDown. Who cares? I'd prefer them on Raw personally, but it is what it is. Then The Miz, this is a surprise. I like The Miz, he stays on Raw, but at least they give him the respect of having him be picked at number 12 instead of in the supplemental draft where a lot of people ended up. Damage Control goes to SmackDown, who gives a flying fuck. Nakamura goes to Raw. Hopefully this is a push of some sort, but I doubt it. Then the NXT female tag team champions, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, go from NXT to SmackDown. No one cares. No one's going to notice, right? And then Indy Hartwell goes from NXT to Raw. She's the women's champion, the NXT women's champion. So that makes no sense whatsoever. Let's have a few tournaments in NXT for no reason, but it is what it is. Then we got the night one supplemental picks. We'll go through these fast. Apollo Crews, who was demoted to NXT, now is on Raw, where he will never appear on TV. Candice LeRae was on Raw, apparently, and she will continue to be on Raw, and thus will never be on TV. Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville, who are now a tag team, right? One was on Raw, one was on SmackDown. They're going to Raw. Dexter Loomis is staying on Raw and staying off TV. Hit Row, staying on SmackDown. Like, basically, the supplemental draft is, like, none of these people are ever on TV. JD McDonough, right? He's an NXT guy going to Raw, but it's like, they didn't even give him the respect to have him drafted during the night so people can be introduced to him. So he's going to be a jobber. We already know that now. Lacey Evans, staying on SmackDown. Haven't seen her in years. Maximum Male Models, which is, of course, is Maxine Dupree, Massey and Mansoor, they're staying on Raw where they belong because they don't ever go on TV. Natalya is going from SmackDown to Raw. No one would notice. Nobody knew that she was on SmackDown. People just thought she was just there. She's one of those people that's just there. Then Viking Raiders are going from SmackDown to Raw with Valhalla. No one gives a flying fuck. Zoe Stark, people really like this broad. She's going to Raw. I personally don't give a rat's ass. She's going from NXT to Raw. She's 29, but she looks like she's like 40. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. No disrespect to her, but that's the truth. Then, tonight on Raw, we continue this horse shit. Rhea Ripley gets drafted at number 1 by Raw. This makes sense. Raw needs a champion, a women's champion, since Bianca Belair went to SmackDown. So the logic dictates that they would use their first pick to pick that person. Now, because SmackDown fumbled, right? Because they fumbled, and instead of taking the Intercontinental Champion when they had the chance, they took Street Profits. You know, the Street Profits are pretty much ruining this draft. Now, SmackDown is forced to take Austin Theory to have a mid-card champion. This leaves the door wide open for Seth Rollins to stay on Raw. You know what I'm saying? So Seth Rollins, who should have been the number 1 pick, is now the number 3 pick. Charlotte Flair stays on SmackDown, where she will continue to do the same thing she's been doing for the last 10 years. Owens and Zayn, since they were on different brands, they're now exclusive to Raw. And that's important because they're the undisputed tag team champions. But it also makes no sense because they're going to be on both shows anyways as a result. But when they drop the titles, you know, then we'll see what happens. The Usos stay on SmackDown to continue the bloodline, hopefully, right? Judgment Day stays on Raw so they can stay with Rhea Ripley. In my opinion, this is a dumb pick, but not as dumb as the Latino World Order, who is like 0-10 since they became a group, right? For some reason, Santos Escobar, Cruz del Toro, Joaquin Wilde, and Zelina Vega get tagged on to Rey Mysterio, who's the only person in this group that has any credibility, validity, or excitement going on for him. The rest of the stable is a bunch of jobbers with no personalities and zero charisma. Nobody wants them around. Then Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, who are the women's tag team champions, motherfucks, get drafted to Raw. For some reason, they were drafted at number 9 on night 2. So someone out there thinks that Latino World Order is more important than having the championships. But it is what it is. It's a shitty championship. Nobody cares about them. So that's that, right? Asuka goes to SmackDown from Raw. No one cares. Maybe she'll get a push. New Day, who was apparently on SmackDown, is now going to Raw. I haven't seen them in a while. Brawling Brutes are staying on SmackDown. Sorry, New Day goes to Raw. Is that what? I don't know if I said it right. Cucks, forgive me. The Brawling Brutes stay on SmackDown. Trish Stratus, who apparently is considered a Raw superstar now, staying on Raw. She got drafted to Raw. That's weird. That seems like a waste. For some strange reason, motherfucks, Karrion Kross stays on SmackDown. I don't know why this guy was not in the supplemental draft where he belongs, but it is what it is. He's staying on SmackDown. Rousey and Shayna Baszler, one of which is her contract is going to be up any second now, and Baszler, who will probably be released as well. They're going from SmackDown to Raw. Who knew? Who cared? LA Knight staying on SmackDown. Braun Strowman and Ricochet. This really shows how far down the card they are. They're going from SmackDown to Raw, where eventually Braun Strowman will turn on Ricochet before they're both released. Then we have Shotzi. She's still around. She's still on SmackDown. Nobody cared. Bronson Reed is staying on Raw. I don't know why. Nobody gives a flying fuck. This guy's never on TV. Then we have, for some reason, Pretty Deadly from NXT. Elton Prince and Kit Wilson are being drafted to SmackDown. Hey, I'll take another tag team on SmackDown, but this is dumb. They should have put Gallus in there or something like that. If you're already taking away all the titles, put Gallus in there. Also, if everybody is eligible for the draft, which they obviously aren't, why didn't Braun Breaker get drafted? But more on that later, cucks. Alpha Academy stays on Raw, and they're, for some reason, not on the supplemental draft. But keep in mind, the Raw draft is much, much longer. So theoretically, anyone after round 4, because SmackDown only had 4 rounds, everyone after round 4 is supplemental draft territory. So Braun Strowman, Ricochet, Shotzi, Bronson Reed, Pretty Deadly, Alpha Academy. Rick Boogs is going from Raw to SmackDown. I really thought he was on SmackDown, to be honest. And then Katana Chance and Kaden Carter going from NXT to Raw. Nobody gives a fuck. Cameron Grimes, baby. Cameron Grimes going to SmackDown. I really hope he gets a push. Cameron Grimes is awesome. You know, I really like Cameron Grimes. I always have. I'm surprised that he's still in the company because he's never used, but he deserves something. Now let's talk about the Night 2 supplemental picks, motherfucks. Supplemental picks. We're speeding through this draft. Akira Tozawa stays on Raw. Good. I'm glad that he has a job. He's always entertained me. Dana Brooke stays on Raw. Emma goes from SmackDown to Raw. Grayson Waller, motherfucks. Grayson Waller goes from NXT to SmackDown. Grayson Waller, who is a big deal in NXT, relatively speaking, gets drafted after Cameron Grimes, after Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, after Pretty Deadly somehow, and perhaps most importantly, after Karrion Kross. So that's what you need to know about him. He's going absolutely nowhere. His career is done. This guy has Justin Gabriel written all over him. Like I've said from day one, people keep saying, oh, Grayson Waller is going to be a big deal. No, he won't. He will not be a big deal. He will be feuding with Tozawa in a matter of days, motherfucks. He's going to do nothing. Nothing's going to come of this. Then we've got Indus Sher, who are NXT. This is Jinder Mahal, Sangha, and Veer Mahan. They're all going to Raw, where they will be jobbing to like Braun Strowman probably. Johnny Gargano, that's a surprise. This guy keeps winning, but, he's supplemental draft category. Angel and Humberto, Los Lotharios, Humberto Carrillo, who was at one point drafted in like the third pick or something on Raw, is now where he belongs, supplemental draft, as is Nikki Cross. Odyssey Jones, who has no business being in this company, goes from NXT to Raw. This guy's got Bull Dempsey, Bronson Reed written all over him. You know what I'm saying? This guy's never going to be anything. Piper Niven stays on Raw. Riddick Moss, who no longer is Madcap Moss, is going to Raw. Fine. It is what it is. I don't hate him. He's all right. Tamina is going from Raw to SmackDown. Nobody gives a flying fuck. Tegan Knox, who's apparently still in the company, as well as Xia Li, go from SmackDown to Raw, where they will become irrelevant. Now, wrestlers that are declared free agents. Think about this. Baron Corbin, motherfucks. Brock Lesnar, who decided that he's going to be a free agent because he's Brock Lesnar, which, of course, de-emphasizes the draft completely. Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin are undrafted, so they are free agents now. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's really stupid. But whatever, because they're way better than like 80% of the people in this company, but whatever, right? Dolph Ziggler was undrafted, so he is a free agent. So, in other words, in night one, motherfucks, Dolph Ziggler was not drafted, but of course, Hit Row deserves a spot. Apollo Crews deserves a spot. JD McDonough, who's actually not bad, deserves a spot. Dolph Ziggler, supplemental draft category. He's not even drafted in that, motherfucker. He is a nothing at this point. Elias, Mustafa Ali, same thing. Omos with MVP. Omos didn't get drafted, but this apparently was negotiated by MVP. In other words, nobody gives a flying fuck. Von Wagner and Zion Quinn are also not drafted. So, what are you going to do? And then there's a few people that are injured that were not included in either draft pool, but we don't care about that, right? The reality here is this. Think about what I just said. There's one good thing that can come from this, but I'm going to talk about that in another video because this video is just about the draft. So, the hater gives this draft a solid grade of literally F-. This is the worst draft I've ever seen. There's no stars, and in my personal opinion, WWE would benefit significantly from getting rid of about half, I'm no joke, half of the people that were drafted, all the supplemental draft people, and having one brand, right? If Edge is going to be on one show and Cucky Rhodes in another, then we can't see matches between two people that might be superstars. Each show has like two superstars, if that. And that's if you consider Cody Rhodes a superstar. And I don't, motherfucks. And I don't. That being said, go fuck yourselves, and that's the video, cucks.